To have a safer culture rooted in reliability, we've determined we need to find ways to practice the 5 following organizational behaviors. Number 1, we need to be transparent about how we operate. We need to understand about how our work is envisioned and how it's actually performed. Number 2, we need to look at the deeper reasons about why we hold our present beliefs and be open to changing them. For instance, we know we want to have safety officers at structural calls, and that's a belief that we have that it's safer because of that. We need to confirm that or deny that. Number 3, we need to be preoccupied with our failures. Look for what went right and what didn't, and be honest about it. And number 4, we need to listen to our members and defer to them for the peer analysis that we do on all of our reviews. In other words, we use peer groups to do peer analysis. Number 5, be relentless in our pursuit for better ways to do what we do. The following video contains interviews of our members who experienced a close call on a structural fire. We hope that this video will demonstrate to all of you that we are committed and we want to increase our commitment towards becoming a more reliable organization.
Yes, ma'am, it is a house fire.
Okay, do you see smoke and flames?
I see fire, honey.
You see fire, okay,
Flames.
all right.
Battalion 203, Battalion 202, Engine 208, Engine 220, Engine 216, LT 214, fire channel B3 for a house fire, 5224 East Lindstrom Lane.
So I'm BSO at Battalion 203, and I'm there with Steve Richards. Every so often we switch positions just to keep everybody fresh, and so this particular day I was acting in the chief role.
So we were dispatched to the intersection of Higley and McKellips, and when we arrived at that location we were able to see this fire from the intersection. However, we were struggling to figure out what the best access was.
We got out to the truck, we were getting turned out, and the address changed.
Alarm to units responding on fire channel B3, updated address, area of 2131 North Higley Road.
En route, Battalion 203 upgraded it to a working fire. They were ahead of us, so I kind of expected them to be on scene first.
So we ultimately routed our way through the neighborhood, and when we got on scene we had access issues with the police department. We're in a position that didn't allow us to set up an optimal location.
PD pulled to the west side, but they made us come to the east side of the street, which was close to the trailer, which preferably would have been better not to be.
Battalion 203 on fire channel B3.
Go ahead, Battalion 203.
Confirming if you've been able to locate.
Engine 208 on scene. We have a single wide trailer with, looks like a fire started on the east end of it in a shed area, spread to the trailer. The structure looks fully involved. Engine 208 will be pulling a engine 3/4.
So they pulled the engine 3/4 to do a direct attack. I finished giving an on-scene report, get off the truck, and I'm coming around. I haven't finished getting my mask or helmet on, and I'm walking by the engine, and 20 is apparently at the hydrant calling me for an assignment.
Engine 220 to command. Engine 220 to command.
Alarm to command, engine 208.
Engine 220 to command.
Engine 208, go ahead.
I finally hear them as I get away from the truck. I put my stuff down, answer them, and ask them to bring engine 208 a supply line.
So we wind up getting here on scene. Engine 208 beat us, and they had the initial on-scene reports. I then took over command. Very limited access in this area. We've got a narrow road, and so we moved just a little bit further north and backed into the driveway of the next unit over. And from that position, we've got some smoke kind of drifting from east to west, and it's essentially cut off all of our vision. So I'm staring at a block wall with smoke to one side, and I'm relying completely on the radio communications that I hear.
I finished getting dressed, and I looked down the driveway. The crew had knocked the fire down, the initial fire of the shed, and they were making entry into the structure. So I didn't want them going in by themselves, so I came in behind them.
Engine 216 's on scene.
We had a lot of other units coming on scene fairly quickly. With certain activities I needed to get accomplished, but I'm still waiting on some more feedback, some more reports to be able to assign everybody appropriately. And so maintaining that communication was very important.
We made entry out of the laundry room, took a right towards where the fire area was. As Steve Johnson was on the nozzle, and he said it's too hot. So we backed out at that point and looked back at the fire area, and it had reignited and was in pretty good flame. So we redirected our nozzle to the exterior.
So the crew of engine 208 needed some additional manpower, so I assigned them the crew of engine 216. They wound up making entry for a primary search. At this point, we did not have a resident all clear. We had some conflicting reports whether this home was vacant and for sale or not. It had furniture throughout. There was nothing that clearly indicated that it was definitely a vacant home. Certainly nobody to verify that it was in fact vacant.
Copy that. Second hand line off of engine 208. Assisting with the search, we working under engine 208. Have we thought about any kind of ventilation?
On ventilation, John, how many members are you going to be taking forward?
So that was the premise that we were working off was we had a shed fire where we had extension to the trailer, but the trailer wasn't the main structure that was on fire. It was the shed that was attached to the trailer. Again, when we pulled up, that's exactly what we saw.
And as I met John in the driveway, I asked him to go to the interior, that we were controlling the fire outside. And the plan was, as we finished knocking the exterior fire down, that we would transition to the interior with them.
Battalion 202. You guys assume safety, please, by the 360. That's affirmative. We'll assume safety. We're trying to approach from an upwind position.
After 216 went interior, Battalion 202 arrived on scene. We assigned Battalion 202 as safety, and so they could get the 360 of the structure and give us a good safety overview.
We were going into an environment where, again, fire's out and we're just dealing with cold smoke, and nothing that we saw when we first made entry led me to believe that it was any different. We were standing up, walking around, so there was no real heat. When I look down, I'm still able to see my boots, so visibility was not horrible.
We searched immediately to a room to our right. John searched that room, came back out. We switched from doing a right-hand search to a left-handed search.
And so I followed John and Jeff into the structure to see what kind of conditions they were going into and helped them pull the line in. It didn't seem too bad to me, but I didn't go past the laundry room area. And by then, Zach was at the door moving the hose, so I backed out and came back to my crew on the exterior shed, and then they were changing the nozzle. Juan said that it got packed up with rocks, that he had taken the nozzle off and was using the bail on the fire, and Steve went back to the engine and grabbed a new nozzle.
Command Ladder 214. L2 214. Make your ventilation sector. Have you bring your crew forward and provide me with ventilation profile. Copy, will be ventilation sector. Did you want us to coordinate with interior crews? That's affirmative, thank you.
So we first progressed to the west side of the trailer, and my initial thought was to take out a window and perform some hydraulic ventilation to get that smoke cleared out. When we got to the west end and I found the window, I tapped it with my axe, but my nozzle man was having a hard time distinguishing exactly where that window was.
It wasn't until we started heading back to the east that the conditions, I could see the smoke conditions start to change. It was getting a little thicker. started getting a little hotter. Right before that, John was going to break out a window to do some hydraulic on it. But at that point, when he was about 5-6 feet away from me, I couldn't see where he was at. I could hear the window that he broke, but I didn't see where John was at. So I was trying to work my way over to find the window and try and not hit John at the same time.
So I didn't go any further. I didn't take out the entire window. I didn't clear anything out. I just tapped it with the axe. He wasn't able to actually locate where that window was. So I said, okay, forget it. Don't worry about the hydraulic ventilation. Let's just keep going.
Control on the fire on the east. Looks like they got a good knockdown on that.
Copy. Sounds like you've got a good knockdown on the fire. Still working on the search. Do you have any needs?
We need ventilation.
Copy, you need ventilation. Letter 214 is coming forward as ventilation sector.
We had a pretty good view of a good half of the trailer from where we were at, since it had burnt the side of the trailer off. And then around that time, engine 216 on the interior was describing high heat conditions.
John came over and said, hey, let's go ahead and pencil this, let's cool it down. So we opened up the hose line, penciled about 8-10 times, didn't seem to have any effect.
He opened the nozzle, sprayed some water to cool it down, and within seconds of him doing that is when the heat really intensified and took us to the floor.
Prior to that, I had already kind of felt my ears were already burning. Didn't realize at that time that my hand was already getting burned. When we opened up the nozzle to try and do the penciling, I was having difficulty changing the nozzle pattern because later we found out that we had rocks in our nozzle. So I don't know if the engine already had rocks or if when they opened the hydrant that they didn't clear out the hydrant and flow it. But we couldn't change the pattern when we were penciling it.
Go ahead, engine 216. You've got some feedback.
Okay, do you have fire burning below us?
Copy, you're asking if you have fire burning below you. Is that correct?
That's what I'm asking.
We had pulled some skirting up by the steps before we went in the door, and so I said that we would pull more skirting, but I didn't see any fire underneath them necessarily. You know, obviously it had burnt the shed and started burning the side of the trailer, but it didn't seem like there was a lot of fire underneath it.
And it was at that point in time where we both said, that's it, we're done, let's get out of here.
Safety to command. Line to first to interior. Safety to command.
Command, go ahead.
The entire rear of the structure, the east side, is fully involved. It's being wind driven to the west. I don't know that it's a good idea to have anybody interior on the structure.
Copy.
Ladder 214 to command.
Command, go ahead.
You've got active fire underneath the main roof of the structure. I agree with County 202's assessment. I think you really need to go defensive on that.
We started to make our way to the front door. Unfortunately, within that time frame, there was miscommunication between the two of us.
I tried bending the hose back, and this is where our communication issue had between me and John. When I bent the hose back and was trying to grab the loop, it kept sliding out. So I was unable to hang on to it, and at the time I didn't realize it was because my hand was burned. I advised John that I couldn't find the loop in the hose. He took it as I couldn't find the hose, and he assumed that I was off. He told me to find the hose and follow it out. So I dropped down to my hands and knees, told him I was on the hose, and that I'm exiting the structure. I assumed that he was behind me because both of us were pretty much down to our knees at that time. I'd followed the hose line out and got off the stairwell to make room for John. Took about 3 or 4 steps, looked back, and John wasn't behind me.
Safety to command.
Command, go ahead. There was a large propane tank behind the wall on the northeast corner that had vented. It's completely emptied of its contents now.
I copy. Command 201.
Command.
On emergency traffic, please. Command, all units on fire ground will be going defensive. All units on fire ground, we're changing to a defensive strategy. All interior crews to exit and stand by for a par.
So he had started to exit while I was looking for the hose line. I found the hose line. I started calling to him that, hey, I've got the hose line. He had already left. He thought I was right behind him. He thought that he had heard he thought that I had heard him tell me that, yep, I got it, we're getting out of here. So that was a miscommunication piece between him and I. Again, I thought he was still in there, so I was continuing to search as it was continuing to get hotter and hotter and hotter. As I got closer to the front door, I started yelling, you know, where is he, where is he? And the firefighter that was positioned at the front door shagging hose for us was yelling to me that he's out, he's already out. So when he said that, that's when I went ahead and made my way out. I saw him outside. I met up with Captain Huguenard.
John pretty much ran into me. I said, is everyone out? And he told me that he had a PAR. So I had given a PAR report for engine 208 and 216.
East Deputy, Battalion 252, CRV 201, Engine 206, Engine 213, Engine 211, Ladder 206, Fire Channel B3 for the balance of a first alarm house fire, 2131 North Higley Road.
After we declared this a defensive fire and everybody came out, the crews were ready and anticipating a PAR, so they were able to give that to me quickly as I called around to each crew.
Although all the crews did a great job of communicating, there was some confusion as to what side each crew was supposed to be assigned to. And so there was a quick conversation between Captain Harless and myself of, I think we need to just reset everything, gather ourselves, and then start over from the beginning. Captain Harless agreed, and at that point, he notified everybody on the fire ground that he needed to get better accountability, and he needed to find out exactly where everybody was.
Are you in a position to take east sector with enough hose lines and resources?
Let's stand full. Sector.
Copy, you'll be east sector. Command engine 220.
Engine 220.
Engine 220, I'm going to make you north sector.
From that point forward, the incident went very, very well. That reset moment that we had on the fire ground was very beneficial in making this a successful outcome. And it's important to remember that anytime you have a scene that may have a little bit of confusion, that you can take a moment to step back, reassess, and then start over from that point.
Once we went to a defensive strategy, then we just started operating the hose line that we had taken interior with us from the exterior in a defensive strategy.
We got back into the firefight. We pulled our hose out, started working on the nozzle. It was about then when I finally realized that something was wrong with my hand. So I advised my engineer to tell my captain, hey, I'm going to rehab. When I walked down to the key pumper and pulled my glove off, it pretty much doubled me over. AMR 208 was just walking up, asked if I was okay. And I told them I think my hand's burnt. And they looked at it and they're like, yeah, we got to take you in. And so I said, hey, I need to go to rehab. And they said, our ambo's down this way, we got to take you in, let's just go to the ambo. Ultimately, we had stripped most of my gear off at my pumper. Got back in the ambo. We had some communication issues trying to communicate with AMR 208's radios. They were unable to get to B3 on the 700 channel. And so we had a little delay on trying to let command know. We tried clearing alarm on C1 to let them know that they had a firefighter in the back of ambo 208.
As we were sitting in the cab, we had the EMT off of the ambulance come up to the window and say that they were transporting a patient. I asked them who they were transporting, and where they were from. I was thinking this was potentially a resident or a bystander. He said he would get back to me. He then left and ended up calling us on the radio about 5 minutes later saying that they were transporting a firefighter to the hospital with burn injuries.
We had unknown injuries, very little details on what was going on, wasn't sure who it was, and especially after just receiving a part on the fire ground, I wasn't sure if that was somebody from rehab who wasn't feeling well, if that was somebody who had just tripped and fallen on the fire ground, or if that was in fact one of the firefighters inside that had sustained some sort of injuries.
Once we were able to find or get AMR 208's channel onto B3, we had heard alarm tell command that they had a firefighter in back of 208 getting ready to be transported. At that point, we made a decision to just go ahead and leave. Got transported to Banner Baywood with burns to my hand, both my ears, and part of my forearm were second degree, and I had first degree on my left arm and stomach and back.
So we wound up working with alarm to contact the AMR unit that had transported the firefighter to get a little bit more details about who it was and what the injuries were. One of the challenges we had was that as the firefighter took off their coat, they had their radio in that, and so they sort of lost their ability to communicate directly with any one of us on scene. Some issues with AMR being able to get on the right radio channel and communicate with us as well. And so this again just goes back to that crew integrity and making sure that communication is always clear and open. I know that one of the things we always talk about when we're testing and studying, preparing to promote to any rank, is finding that mental reset. This is one of those events where we got here quickly, there was a lot happening, a lot of crews right on top of each other waiting for assignments. And so this confusion just sort of started to build on itself. And so that reset of being able to just sort of stop and clean things up was really important. So I took a moment, told everybody just hang on, we're gonna reset things, and I started renaming people and very clearly defining or redefining where I wanted them to be and what I wanted them to do. Sometimes that's just necessary on an event. And so I really felt like from that moment forward, things really cleaned up and ran a lot more smoothly. Obviously, I wish I had laid out cleanly from the get-go, but it's never too late to stop and clean it up moving forward.
Hello, everybody. My name is James Johnson. I first would like to commend the crews and everybody who worked on this review to come forward with their thoughts to help our organization and our firefighters get better. That's truly what this is all about. I would like to discuss some key points in this call. The first thing I would like to talk about is the importance of having a safety officer. The safety officer is able to provide valuable information to all of the crews and command on the scene. In this incident, the safety officer was able to do a 360, which provided good information. Although we want the 360 to occur as soon as we can by somebody on the fire ground, in this situation, it was not able to be accomplished. Thus, the safety officer was able to do it. The second thing I would like to talk about is everybody on the fire scene is able to communicate any hazards that are involved. In this situation, Ladder 214 was able to communicate a lot of fire in the main room. That helped command understand the situation and the severity of the call. Next, I would like to talk about hose lines. It is very important that we remain on our hose lines. It's often easy for us to see inside of a structure and think that I'll be okay, it's clear in here. But situations change very rapidly, just like in this incident. Change very rapidly. If you're on your hose line, you're always able to find that safe, quick exit. Finally, I would like to talk about accountability. It is important for everyone to understand we are all responsible for accountability. On the fire ground, you're responsible for yourself and those who are working with you. Always make sure your company officer knows where you're at and the sector officers know where you're at throughout the call. I hope you all were able to take some valuable information away from this review and video. Again, thank you for all of those that were involved with making this
video. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and be safe out there.